Bukayo Saka, are Arsenal treating him right? The reason I bring that up, Lee, is because a lot of people have spoken to me about this position this season being so important to be filled. So I wanted to have a chat with you about it in relation to whether we need to cover him in a way of a striker so that Jesus can go over there, or if we need to get a winger in to actually cover for Bukayo Saka. Because for me, people are giving him a hell of a lot of disrespect. I've got to say that about Bukayo Saka. I think he's been heavily relied upon way too much. I think we forget sometimes he's been in the team since he was around 17, 18. 4 or 5 years have gone on. At the age of 22, he's still relied upon as one of our best players and one of our most important players. And for the first time at the weekend, we saw him actually get subbed. It don't normally happen. He normally plays 90 minutes. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about how we might replace him and how we might take some of the pressure off of him. So my first kind of question to you, Lee, is what do we need to do in this transfer window which can relieve some of that pressure off of Bukayo Saka, mate?
Well, I think we need to sign a striker or someone attacking. I do believe this, and I think that if Arsenal don't do this, this could be. I don't say the end of the world for us, like, but I think it could be like very, very poignant as we go on through the season, like, because Saka is very, very important to us. He's also very, very important to England, whether you like it or not. He is. So he'll be playing in the England games coming up as well, like, you know. I liked what I see on Saturday when against Wolves when the substitute, everybody around me was going out to be Martinelli, and it wasn't. It was Saka, and Martinelli went over to that side of the park. So that could be something that they could be using in the future. Sometimes it's always Martinelli coming off for Trossard, maybe bringing Trossard on and Martinelli going over there and switching. So I think that's something that they can do. But I do think that also Jesus could be vital and playing in games like that. Now, for the big games that matter, then Saka needs to be there. But there are games when I think you can give a player a rest here and there. Look at what Manchester City done yesterday. We can't afford to do that with players at this moment in time, and we've got to find a situation where we can do it. Maybe a little bit more trust from Arteta from the squad is required. I know that's a big thing of yours. But when it comes down to squads, this is where I think we need to look at and assess Saka. A lot of people will say, oh, all the best players play all the time, and they do, Dan. They do, you know, and very rarely get subbed off and all that, you know, and so that is there. But just look at Real Madrid yesterday. They rely very, very heavily on their top players. You know, the players that they bring in, they play. And listen, their starting 11 is sensational. But just have a little look at this bench. Now, you're looking at that bench. There's no one on there that really sets out and says, he's a game changer. And that's a big thing you say, Dan. Oh, we need game changers on the bench. How many game changers have you got on the bench there? You know, look at Luka Modric, like, you know, well into his 30s now. You know, shall I say it, Danny Ceballos was on there. Like, didn't even get on, Dan. You know, so when you look at our bench and have a look at theirs, I think our bench is stronger. And the reason I do think this also, and I think, you know, I'm not sticking up for Arsenal here or any of the English clubs because Manchester City have continued to do it. But look at the squad that Manchester City have got. Is the Premier League is tough. I don't think it's the best in the world, but it's the most competitive. And that means players, you know, you cannot afford. Look, how can I say it? You know, Brentford away is difficult, Dan. Crystal Palace away is difficult games, you know. They've got players that can match winners in there. I don't think that in Spain and maybe in Germany that they have that as much. From the top end, definitely, but I'm talking at the bottom end. You know, there's some real tough games. We had tough games last season. Look at Luton, 4-3 last minute winner from Declan Rice. You know, so these things there, you do need a big squad. But what you need is that squad playing those games and getting through those games. And when you come up against the big boys, Manchester City, Tottenham, Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, whoever, Aston Villa after including that now, like, you know, Newcastle, you need Saka, not just available, but 100% fresh. I felt at last season that he wasn't fresh as much as he should be.
Yeah, listen, what you're saying there in relation to the Real Madrid bench is actually a really good thing. And don't get me wrong, there's some quality on the bench. We're not saying that Real Madrid have got a load of scrubs on the bench, right? But what you're saying, I totally agree with in relation to the Arsenal squad. I think what we're trying to do is compete with Manchester City, who, let's be real, are one of the best in the world. I totally agree that in the Bundesliga and Real Madrid, they're not competing with Pep and Manchester City, but we are, right? Unfortunately, we can't moan about that. We just got to get on with it, and we've got to try and get across the line. And the way to do that is to strengthen. Now, I want to bring some stats up here now, Bukayo Saka, because a lot of people talk about Bukayo Saka as being this player who's not as good as Salah and is not as good as Palmer, and that Kudus is better than. So disrespectful, in my opinion. You look at these stats from him last season, right? Bukayo Saka, just in the Premier League alone, got 16 goals and 9 assists. In the Champions League, he only played 9 games. He got 4 goals and 4 assists. That's 20 goals and 14 assists last season, in a season when all rival fans were telling me he was very underwhelming and wasn't good enough. So what I do is I look at the players that we've been linked with to try and look at comparisons in how their seasons went. We've been linked with Kingsley Coman, Lee, right? Kingsley Coman played 17 times, 3 goals, 3 assists, 2 goals in the Champions League after 7 starts. He got 5 goals and 3 assists last season, right? And we're trying to look at him to cover for Bukayo Saka. Let's look at Leroy Sané, a little bit better. He played 42 games last season, so he played a lot more than Kingsley Coman. He got 10 goals and 13 assists, so he got 23 GA. So we're talking about bringing these players in for a lot of money, and actually neither of them got anywhere near Bukayo Saka. So this is how good Bukayo Saka is, and this is why I think it's really important to look at the stats of Bukayo Saka last season, and already he's got a goal and assist in his first game. So this is how important Bukayo Saka is. I think people disrespect him massively, and don't get me wrong, there is some Arsenal fans out there that probably do say he's world class and go over the hill with it, right? All fan bases have got that. I think we need to look at how good and important Bukayo Saka is, stats-wise, right? So we've got 2 options for me, Lee, right? We can either go and get a Kingsley Coman or a Leroy Sané or a Dingra from Brighton or somebody like that to come in and cover, or we can get in a striker and we can use Gabriel Jesus on the right-hand side. And I'm kind of steering towards that. The reason I'm doing that is because of Victor Gyokeres. I think he's the guy we've got to go and get. With Ivan Toney linked with Saudi Arabia now and Victor Osimhen Chelsea bound, it looks like Victor Gyokeres is the only striker that we could potentially realistically get now, because Isak's not going to happen. Sesko's definitely not happening now. And they're the only other 2 that we were loosely linked with, right? So for me, I look at Victor Gyokeres' stats. I've done this before, but I'll bring them up again. These stats are incredible, right? In 50 appearances, he's got 58 goals and assists. 43 goals and 15 assists. Absolutely outstanding. 29 league goals last season with 9 assists. Only played 9 games in the Europa League, got 5 goals and 2 assists. And in the cup games, was scoring goals for them as well. 6 in one of them and 3 goals in 2 in another. So for me, people will say, you can't replicate that Portuguese form. How do we know that? Sometimes you've got to take a punt and you've got to take a risk. Otherwise, Thierry Henry wouldn't be at Arsenal as a legend, because he wasn't very good over in Serie A. And he wasn't really a left winger, he was a striker. And it weren't really working for him in Juventus. We've got other examples, multiple examples of players that we bought from different leagues that we took a punt on. Nobody knew who Freddie Ljungberg was over in Sweden. But we brought him here and he was brilliant. So sometimes you can transform that form over to a different league. And people will point at Darwin Núñez. They've got a right to do that. But then you look at Victor Gyokeres and Darwin Núñez, they're completely different players. Yeah, Victor Gyokeres is a much better ball carrier. Victor Gyokeres has a lot more of finishing ability in front of goal. The stats prove that. I think he's more of an all-round striker, and I think he's something different that we've already got. So I want to ask you, Lee, would you rather us go and get a Gyokeres and play Jesus wide, or would you rather us actually go and get a winger that can cover for Saka?
No, I'm with you. I'll go and get Gyokeres. I would absolutely go and get him. Like, you know, I do think we need someone. When you hit those stats, it's very, very impressive. But listen, every signing you make, there's a gamble on it. There's no guarantees. There's no guarantee that Mbappe's going to be fantastic at Real Madrid, like, you know, and be the higher the money, the better player. Of course, there's less risk of it. Look at Declan Rice, you know, but it doesn't always work out. Arsenal's record transfers in going through the years have never been not been that really successful, Dan. You know, and sometimes you have to take a gamble. You're telling me that it wasn't a punt on Havertz this last season? I think that was a big gamble by the powers that be at the club. Would you say it's worked at this moment in time? It is working. But when I look at it, Dan, and I'm going to be brutal about this now, brutal. What is it going to take to get past Manchester City? I look at it and it's what if it's now and we don't bring in anybody, we ain't. They're better than us. They're
Yep.
stronger than us. This is a fact now. Like, you know, they put out a statement over the weekend that has frightened me. They left players out and still went and beat Chelsea comfortably. Yes, Chelsea had their moments. Like you could actually say Wolves had their moments against us. But you're talking Chelsea. Now, I look back on last season, they've already improved on their performances of last season. You might go, well, that's a bit silly, right? A bit premature after one game. Well, last season they played Chelsea twice. Didn't beat them. Only picked up 2 points. They picked up 3 points against Chelsea already. So now, if things go to plan like they did last season, everybody's going, oh, they will actually have more than 90 points next season. You know, if they now match every other game at the end of the season, they will be more points than they were last season. This is what you're up against, Dan. You've got to, dare I say it, take the punt, have a gamble. You know what I mean? Like, to get over this unbelievable team of Manchester City. People have said Pep won't be so hungry. I see him very, very hungry yesterday. I see the players hungry yesterday, working their socks off to the end. You know, they're not going to give up this title. They want to win it as much as we do, Dan. And they've got that quality. They've got the squad and they've got the manager to do that. So Arsenal have got to be better than them in certain areas. Now, I don't think we're better than them in our squad. I think we've got as good as players in our 11. I think if we played them with our best 11 and they play with our best 11, there'd be, say, out of 10 times, there'd be 3 wins for us, 4 wins for them, and a few draws in there or something like that. There's not a lot in it. When it comes to squad, I think that they're further in front. And when it comes to the manager, whether you like it or not, they're further in front. So now you tell me why people are expecting Arsenal, oh, we've got to win the league next season. If you don't win the league with this and that, you know, when you iron it out, they are the better team. So we've got this window of opportunity where we've got to try and make us the better team, or at least get even with them, and then it may be something like a decision here or there, or goes from it. You know, at the moment they have the stronger hand. If you're playing a game of cards, they have a stronger hand at this moment in time, Dan. You've got a chance to strengthen your hand. I think you've got to take it, and it's not being over dramatising all these things and everything like that. I'll be really honest, Dan. If Arsenal lose or draw to Aston Villa, right, which could happen, they're a good side. We go to Spurs, lose or draw against Spurs, we could be 4 to 6 points away from Man City before we play them at the Etihad. Now, if they were to beat us, they could be potentially 9 points, 6 to 9 points in front of us by the end of September. Now, you ain't going to win the league from there. Simple as that. So these few weeks coming up are so important on and off the field, Dan. I can't over dramatise it as much as you want. I'm not doing it to get anything out of it. I'm just saying what the reality could be. Now, you can look at it on the other hand. If we go through and we go through unbeaten in these next few games and find ourselves lovely 15 points out of that, what a position that would be, because we've gone past Villa away, Tottenham away, and Manchester City away. But you've got to have firepower. You've got to have players, and you've got to have your players on top form. Now, Saka, for me, as great as he is, I want to see us play Wolves and go, do you know what? We don't need Saka today. We're leaving him out. We left Saka out on Saturday. We might not have beaten Wolves because I didn't think he was at his sharpest, but 2 moments of magic win us that game. And that is how important he is to this football club. And I don't care how it is, like, we might have drawn that game 0-0, Dan, if he doesn't play. if you put Nelson in there. We don't know. We don't know. But you know what I'm saying on that, like, we can't afford to leave Saka out. Now, there's other teams like they've never been able to do it. Liverpool never left Mo Salah out hardly ever at all when they was really chasing down Manchester City for the titles. So it may be that we're going to have to do that. But it's there for a debate, and I think at times and in games that we are going to have to say, Bukayo, you're not playing today. You're on the bench. I think that is we are not with this squad and with these players. We are not in that position where we can afford to do that.
Facts. Listen, man, I'm going to bring up the Manchester City and the Arsenal bench because whether we like it or not, this is the team that we've got to try and get better than, or at least competing with. And I think the bench between Arsenal and Manchester City is so close now. Over the last couple of years, it was night and day. But I honestly believe that we're closer. If you bring up the Manchester City bench from the weekend, look, right, you've got the following. You've got Kyle Walker, John Stones, Nathan Ake, Jack Grealish, Ortega, Nunez, Foden, and then you've got the two kids, O'Reilly and McAtee. Now, when we have kids on our bench, there's a lot of the fan base, and I'm one of these that goes, not good enough, not strong enough. Well, Manchester City have got kids. Yeah, I know they've got Rodri out at the moment, and that'll obviously take one of those out of the mix, right? But we've got players out of there as well. Lewis Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri have been part of our bench, as have Reece Nelson and Eddie Nketiah. I know that they're two players that are potentially leaving. But with those two players leaving and going out, I look at what Arsenal have got, and it is comparable, but we're still quite a distance in relation to a couple of key positions. So I look at what we've got on our bench, right? And what we had at the weekend. I actually don't mind Arsenal's bench, by the way. I'm not saying it's absolutely weak, right? But there is a clear difference with a couple of positions. So Aaron Ramsdale's on the bench. Gabriel Jesus, Jurriën Timber, Leandro Trossard, Eddie Nketiah, Jorginho, Reece Nelson, Calafiori, and Ethan Nwaneri. Now, I understand that we've still got Fabi Vieira and Tommy Yasu that also probably would make that list as well. So I look at that bench, Lee, and the frustrating thing, which is a weird thing to say frustratingly, is we ain't far off of Man City's squad here. We're talking about like one or two players. With Mikel Merino coming in, Calafiori already here, we just want that attacker to come in. And I think that could be that final piece. So what we're doing here is we're collectively saying that, yeah, Bukayo Saka might get some cover, but also Arsenal's bench is looking as strong, if not as stronger in certain positions than Manchester City's. We can do no more. But what I will be annoyed at is if we don't get that one attacker after Mikel Merino. I think we absolutely have to. So to wrap up, Lee, the bench at Manchester City and the bench at Arsenal, it's pretty much that now. Yeah, Man City might just be better. Man City might have a better starting 11 than us in certain positions. I'd go with that. But actually, when you look at the impact from the bench, it's so important that Arsenal aren't bringing on Eddie Nketiah this season and Reece Nelson. People might sat there and say, well, if we bring in Gyokeres, what happens to Havertz? Well, he's another player that sits on the bench that we can bring on. That's another option. It's a good thing. Gabriel Jesus. We can't 1 minute say, look how good Manchester City's bench is, and then complain because a few of our players are now sitting on the bench that we want to play. That's what you have for a squad, right? We had that with the Invincibles. Cardo and Wiltord were backing up Henry and Bergkamp. Reyes and Van Persie were backing up our width. We had Ray Parler and Edu backing up Vieira and Gilberto. People forget this because it was a long time ago. But this was happening, and this has got to happen again now. So my kind of question to you, I suppose, is how close are we to Man City here? Because this is fine margins, Lee.
Listen, we are, and when you look at that, it's fantastic that bench has strengthened up like it is. We've had players on that bench that we were worshipping and saying that that's our, great players and all that. These are players now that are on the bench, and listen, the difference between us and them at the moment is trust. I am going back to when you were saying it. Look, if Gilberto was out the side, Edu come in, there was no difference. You know what I mean? You could play Edu in there or Gilberto. Vieira missed games. Henry missed games. We went to Old Trafford and won the title without Bergkamp, without Henry. You know what I mean? Like we couldn't do that now without Saka and Rice and all that. Like why could we do that then? Because everybody was good as everybody else. And the fact of the matter is now is that we're getting close to it. We are getting close to it. But we need one or two more. Now, one or two more puts us in a good position. And then you can say, right, I'm playing I'm playing that free up front this game here, and you won't see much of a difference. And and rest them out, and everybody's fresh and whatever. And that's what Pep does better than anybody else. You know, like the Grealishes not playing at the moment, but they will come in when it matters, and other players as well. And that is what we've got to do. It's not about spending the money and whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's an £80 million player or it's a £40 million player. It's what's good for the squad. What we need for the squad. And I'm with you, Dan. 2 players make that squad stronger. And I'm still saying it. If you then take out Eddie and you take out Nelson and they're sold, I still think you need a bit more to back that up. But listen, we've got 2 very, very young players on there in Wanyeri and Miles Skelly, who I think will contribute, particularly in cup games later on and whatever, But we are so close, and I think that's the frustration of everybody at the moment, Dan. We are so close to competing with an unbelievable force, and they are an unbelievable force. But I don't think you're going to break them unless you break the bank. That's all I say on it.
Yeah, listen, absolute facts. I can't disagree with what you said there. I think Manchester City are absolute force to be reckoned with, and Arsenal got to get across the line. Listen, people, the transfer market is still open. There is still time for us to do some business. Let us know in the comment section. Do you want us to go for a winger, or do you want us to go for a striker? Or are you greedy and you want both? There's still time, potentially after Marino, for 1 or 2 to come in. Will Edu and Arteta get it right? Listen, do me a favor, hit a like on this one. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make us get towards 40k, which is our next target. And we'll see you next time. Take it easy, people.